Well, it's Grandpa Ricky about to read chapter 2 of No Mud, No Lotus. I started reading some of it to June today. It's a powerful book and it's really helping me. The first step in the art of suffering, of transforming suffering, is to come home to our suffering and recognize it. For most of us, there's always a mental discourse going on day and night in our heads. We relive the past, we worry about the future. We don't stop to take a breath, to even notice if we're suffering, until suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, the suffering overwhelms us. Our thinking, perceiving, and worrying take away all the space inside us and keep us from being in touch with what's happening moment to moment. The Buddha said that nothing can survive without food, and this is true, not just for the physical existence of living beings, but also for states of mind. Love needs to be nurtured and fed to survive. And our suffering also survives because we enable and feed it. We ruminate on suffering, regret, and sorrow. We chew on them, swallow them, bring them back up, and eat them again and again. If we're feeding our suffering while we're walking and working and eating or talking, we're making ourselves victims of the ghosts of the past, of the future, or our worries in the present. We're not living our lives. If we try to use consumption to ignore or distract ourselves from our suffering, we end up making the suffering worse. We turn on the television. We talk or text or gossip on the phone. We get on the internet. We find ourselves in front of the refrigerator over and over again. When we cut ourselves off from the pain in our mind, we're also abandoning our bodies where suffering is being stored. When we feel loneliness and despair, we seek to cover them up and pretend they're not there. We don't feel very well inside, so in order to forget, we go and look for something to eat, even if we're not hungry at all. We eat in an attempt to feel better, and we end up becoming addicted to eating because we're trying to cover up the suffering inside and the real problem is left unaddressed. Or if we become addicted to computer games or other kinds of audiovisual entertainment, like watching YouTube, I guess. Electronic distractions not only fail to help heal the underlying suffering, they may contain stories or images that feed our craving, our jealousy, anger, or despair. Instead of making us feel better, they numb us only briefly, and then they make us feel worse. To consume in order to cover up our suffering doesn't work. We need a spiritual practice to have the strength and skill to look deeply into our suffering, to get inside the suffering and make a breakthrough. The next section is stopping and acknowledging suffering. When suffering arises, the first thing to do is to stop, follow our breathing, and acknowledge the suffering. Don't try to deny uncomfortable emotions or push them down. Rather saying, breathing in, I know suffering is there. Breathing out, I say hello to my suffering. Breathing in, I know suffering is there. Breathing out, I say hello to my suffering. To take one mindful breath requires the presence of our mind, our body, and our intention. With our conscious breath, we reunite our body and our mind and arrive in the present moment. Just breathing in mindfully already brings us to a surprising amount of freedom. With each breath, we generate mindful energy, bringing mind and body together in the present moment to receive this caring acknowledgement of our suffering. In just 2 or 3 breaths taken with your full intention, you may notice that regret and sorrow about the past have paused, as well as uncertainty, fear, and worries about the present. Body and mind together. Each of us has a body, but we aren't always in touch with it. Maybe our body needs us. Our body is calling, but we don't hear it. We're so caught up in our job, our computer, our phone, or in our conversations, we can forget that we can even have a body. If we can get in touch with our body, then we can also get in touch with our feelings. There are many feelings calling to us, and every feeling is like a child. Suffering is a hurt child crying out to us, but we ignore the voice of the child within. The process of healing begins when we mindfully breathe in. In daily life, very often, our body is here, but our mind is off in the past, or in the future, or in our projects. The mind is not with the body. And when we breathe in and focus our attention on our in-breath, we reunite our body and our mind. We become aware of what is going on in the present moment, in our body, in our perceptions, and around us. When we bring our mind home to our body, something wonderful happens. Our mental discourse stops its chattering. Thinking can be productive, but the reality is that most of our thinking is unproductive. When we think, it may be easy for us to be lost in our thinking. But when we use our breath to bring our mind home to the body, we can stop thinking. When you come back to yourself and breathe mindfully, your mind's attention has only one subject, and that is your breath. If you continue to breathe in and out mindfully, you maintain the state of presence and freedom. Your mind will be clearer, and you will make better decisions. It's much better to make a decision when your mind is clear and free, rather than in a sway of fear and anger and worries. When I was a young monk, Thich Nhat Haug says, I believed that it took a long time to get any kind of insight. The truth is, there are insights that can come right away. When you practice mindfulness of breathing, you know right away that you're alive. And that to be alive is a wonder. You know right away that you're alive, and that's alive. To be alive is a wonder. If you can be aware that you have a living body, and you notice when there's tension in your body, that's already an important insight. With that insight, you have already begun to diagnose the situation. You don't need to practice 8 years or 20 years in order to wake up. Breathing mindfully isn't something that's hard to do. You don't have to suffer while breathing. You're already doing that all day long. You don't need to struggle to control your breathing. In fact, breathing in can become a real pleasure. You don't just allow yourself to breathe in naturally while focusing your attention on your in-breath. It's like the morning sunshine on a flower that has closed up overnight. The sunshine doesn't interfere with the flower. The sunshine just embraces and subtly permeates the flower. Embraced by the energy of the sunshine, the flower begins to bloom. And many years ago, a song came to me. This is Grandpa Ricky talking, and it goes like this. Breathing in and breathing out, that's what life is all about. Breathing in and breathing out, breathing in and breathing out, that's what life is all about. So thank you very much for watching. It's given me real pleasure thinking about anybody who's watching this, and maybe it will be helpful. Because when you get old, you feel pretty useless, and for me to even think that these things might help even one person really kind of makes my day. And now I'm going to go off and vacuum the floor and give it a mop and get on with my chores. And I hope that you share somehow what's making your life easier. And as my friend Pilar said, it could be one picture, 1,000 words, one picture that made your life easier, and figure out a way to share it. So thank you very much. And hopefully tomorrow or the next day I can read the next part. The next part is the pull of distractions. Okay, thank you very much.